I wanted to cover the commandment in the Ten Commandments, or 10 utterances, or 10 words, or whatever you prefer to call it, I guess, in Exodus chapter 20, verse 17. Um, I don't know, it might be a verse different in the Jewish translations. Um, Sometimes there's a one verse difference between Christian translations and Jewish translations. I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe it has something to do with the prologue or the heading of the um, chapter being turned into a verse, but I mean, that's just a guess. Anyway, so um, we hear it said that this is one of the Ten Commandments, but at least I've never heard many teachings or sermons about uh, covetousness. Um, I hear it mentioned, or see it mentioned, and um, at least in some of the Christian literature, because the Christian literature tends to deal with vagaries and abstractions, um, and not so much with concrete thought as in Jewish thinking or Hebraic thinking. Um, so I think there I've seen at least covetousness mentioned as, something to be avoided. But it doesn't really provide any specifics on how to avoid it or why to avoid it. And anyway, now I think a Christian would almost immediately say, well, the reason that you should not covet your neighbor's wife is because then you're committing adultery of the heart, based on one of the teachings, alleged teachings of Jesus, so called. But it doesn't really cover the rest of the verse, like the person's house, or their servants, or their ox, their livestock, or their ass, maybe their mode of transportation, or anything that is your neighbor's. Could be anything. Could be a vase, could be a comb for the hair, could be anything. So, why is it so bad to covet something that belongs to someone else? Um, It reminds me of the Sinead O'Connor, I think it's an album title of hers. I do not want what I have not got. And so, you know, it made me want to look up, because I'm aware that there are religions and philosophies where one does not really, or learns to, or strives to not desire really anything in life, which, I mean, that is, I think, contrary to Judaism and to the Torah. There are things that you should want in life. For example, you should want to do the Creator's will. The Creator commanded mankind to reproduce. So you should want to get married and have children. Um, I can't say that that has always easily come to me, but there it is. It is something that should be wanted in Judaism, in the Torah, in living according to the Torah. Um, really, I think it's fair to say that um, in living according to the Torah, you should want to be successful in life. You should want to be prosperous, because prosperity is often seen as a sign of blessing in the Torah. So, um, I mean, you can look at that idea by comparing it to the other extreme. Should you want to be in filthy rags in the gutter? Um, I think some religions have, or at least some adherents of some religions in pursuing the beliefs or ideals or values or ethics of those religions, have gone to the extent of, wearing filthy rags almost in a gutter, just trying to live their religion. Um, I It reminds me somewhat of Keanu Reeves in the movie Little Buddha, where um, he's seeking enlightenment, and he goes a little too far to the extent that he wasn't even providing for the nutrition of his own body. And then I think he comes to the realization that he should be pursuing the middle way or the middle path, and which I took to be balance in life, not not extreme asceticism or self-denial, but balance in life, not greediness, not is the word. It's probably not decadence. Self gratification, exorbitant living, excess. It's not that at the one extreme, and it's not extreme self denial at the other extreme. It's striving for the middle way or the middle path, balance in life. So that I guess the Siddhartha Buddha, which I don't know if he even was considered the Siddhartha Buddha at that point, um, realized that in pursuing his religion, his spiritual enlightenment, he realized that taking it to one extreme was not the solution. So, but anyway, I asked Google AI the question, which religions or philosophies teach not to desire things that you do not possess? And by that I meant everything, because I was aware that, there could be beliefs that embraced this idea. So it answered several religious or philosophical traditions emphasize the importance of, and you might, just real quick, you might be asking yourself, why are we talking about other religions on a channel that primarily promotes the Torah? Um, it's just because I'm going to be taking covering some thoughts from all kinds of directions, just trying to make a little sense for myself about covetousness, because I feel like I arrived at an idea based upon what are supposed to be some recent discoveries in quantum science, I guess, and AI, that may that may explain why covetousness is a bad thing. Um, but getting back to the Christian association, where they might say, oh, well, the reason you shouldn't covet your neighbor's wife is because that's adultery of the heart. Well, again, there's no teaching from Jesus that I can think of that explicitly says that you should not continue to look upon and desire another person's PlayStation 5 because that is gaming of the heart. You know, it, there's there's no explicit parallel teaching from Jesus about some of the other types of things to be coveted, which at the end of that verse, verse 17 in Exodus 20, it says, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. So, and I'm sure someone could, go through the teachings of Jesus and say, well, look here he's talking about this thing mentioned in chapter 20, verse 17, and here he's talking about this other thing mentioned in chapter 20, verse 17. So someone, who's probably very enthusiastic about the teachings of Jesus could probably come up with a list that covers it. But what I'm saying is that I don't think that's the reason. I don't think the Christian teaching of Jesus is the reason for Exodus chapter 20, verse 17, the prohibition against covetousness. That is the typical Christian mistake to interpret what was given long before in light of the more recent Christian teaching. And if that's how you study the so-called Old Testament or the Hebrew Tanakh, you're going to arrive at many mistaken conclusions. Because what I found when I got kind of sick of all of the contradictions in the Christian canon of Scripture, I decided to take everything I believed and just put it on the shelf, not abandon it, but mentally, intellectually put it on the shelf, and then study the Hebrew Tanakh, because chronologically it came before the so-called New Testament, and study the Hebrew Tanakh, each book of it, in chronological order, and to note any questions I had about a passage in the margins. I even still have that copy of the JPS translation of the Torah with those notations, just as a reminder and a bit of a sentimental attachment to this period in my study in which I arrived at such a breakthrough, because it wasn't, I think, before I was halfway through the book of Exodus when I realized, I'm going to take a cough drop so you guys don't have to listen to me coughing as much. I don't know why I'm so hoarse this morning. But it wasn't before I was halfway through the book of Exodus when I saw that Christianity was an anti-Torah body body of propaganda. It was really an attack on the Torah. It was not bolstering the Torah. It was not supporting the Torah. the Christian scriptures are an attack upon the Torah. And I found that I didn't really need the Christian scriptures to interpret what the Torah said. That the Torah was pretty darn good at interpreting what the Torah said. So, anyway, so to get back to this, several religious and philosophical traditions emphasize the importance of minimizing or eliminating desires for external possessions, particularly in the pursuit of spiritual enlightenment or liberation. These include Buddhism, Hindu, Jainism, and some aspects of Christianity. And then they fail to mention Judaism, but maybe that's because Judaism doesn't teach like universal abhorrence to seeking after external possessions. It's it's primarily the possessions of others that you're not to seek after or desire. These traditions often view attachment to worldly things as a source of suffering and a hindrance to spiritual progress. And some of that, especially in Christianity, might come from I think it's either Gnostic or Manichaean thinking, where like all matter is considered evil, and the creation itself is evil, and it was created by an evil, I think, deity who was evil in creating it. So you get these weird strains of Christianity who believe that the flesh is evil, that that all matter in existence and all possessions are evil, and what you're really striving for is to be liberated from all that physicality to, dwell in heaven as a spirit instead of on this earth that the Creator created for mankind to dwell upon. The the Creator looked upon creation and he saw that it was good. The Adam and Eve, they could look upon the fruit of at least some of the trees of the garden and see that it was good for consumption. It was good to desire. So clearly there are things about our existence on earth that are good if you will only make an effort to see them that way. Some people are so affected by certain kinds of nihilistic thinking in this world that they want to think that everything is evil, everyone is evil, there's nothing good about life, yet they're still here on this planet. They haven't done anything about their being here, even though things are as bad as they believe they are in their minds. So, anyway, Buddhism, based on the teachings of the Buddha, directly addresses the issue of desire as the root cause of suffering. The Four Noble Truths, a foundational doctrine of Buddhism, state that suffering is caused by attachment to desire, and that ending suffering requires the cessation of these attachments. Buddhists strive for nirvana, a state of liberation from the cycle of rebirth and suffering, which is achieved through the elimination of desire and attachment to the world. So keep in mind that term of cycle of rebirth and suffering, which, suffering can just be a byproduct of living in this physical world to to an extent, especially if you're living somewhere where you've got wild tigers prowling the jungles right outside your neighborhood. Buddhism's emphasis on detachment from worldly desires and possessions is a central aspect of the path to enlightenment. Hinduism also emphasizes the importance of minimizing desire, particularly in the context of moksha, liberation. The Bhagavad Gita, a central scripture in Hinduism, teaches about the importance of performing actions without attachment to their results, which helps to free the individual from the cycle of rebirth. Hindu philosophy, like Buddhism, so far these make it sound like you don't want to be reincarnated. Hindu philosophy, like Buddhism, acknowledges that desires and attachments are major contributors to suffering and hinder spiritual progress. Jainism shares with Buddhism and Hinduism the emphasis on non-attachment and reducing desire as a means to achieve liberation. If you've been getting some microphone distortion, that might be because I've been brushing on the cord of this headset mic. So I apologize. I've noticed that. I'm trying to make sure I don't brush against the cord. Jainism shares with Buddhism and Hinduism the emphasis on non-attachment and reducing desire as a means to achieve liberation. Jainism's principle on ahimsa, nonviolence, also extends to the avoidance of greed and attachment to possessions, as these are seen as causes of suffering and harm. Jains practice asceticism, including the renunciation of possessions and attachment to worldly things, to facilitate spiritual growth and liberation. Christianity, while not as central to Christianity as in the above-mentioned traditions, the principle of detachment from worldly possessions is still relevant. The Christian ideal is to prioritize spiritual fulfillment and love for God over material wealth and possessions. I think it was Bertrand Russell who said that one of the most ignored teachings of Jesus is to sell all that you have and give to the poor, saying that very few Christians actually do this. They usually try to explain it away in some way rather than fulfilling that particular teaching literally. Some Christians, particularly those in monastic orders, practice asceticism, renouncing worldly possessions and pleasures in order to deepen their spiritual devotion and connection with God. The idea of earthly desires is also a common concept in various Christian theological traditions, where focusing on earthly desires is seen as a hindrance to spiritual growth and a path to suffering. So, I just wanted to cover that there are religions where it's taught to pretty much stop desiring any kind of external possessions. So, in thinking about this, I thought of the four types of people mentioned in the Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our fathers, which you can find in the Mishnah. So this was from the Mishnaic period, which embraced the first century in which Christianity was invented. So about 200 BC to 200 AD. And this is in I don't know if it's called chapter 5 and verse 10. But here, if you go to this link at Chabad.org, they've got a whole 53-minute lecture about these four types of people. But here the text doesn't actually, maybe it's the text description is only so long, so they couldn't include the whole thing. So I'm going to close this and go here. This is at aish.com, A-I-S-H. Dr. Avraham Twersky. I think he's a rather well-known rabbi. Psychological and Hasidic insights into the four basic character types. There are four character types among people. A, one who says, "What is mine, and what is yours." This is an average character type, but some say this is characteristic of Sodom. You know, the city of Sodom. B, mine is yours, and yours is mine. This is an ignorant person. In another place it says that this person is unlearned, or this person is a boor, B-O-O-R, or this person is an Am Haaretz, which I should probably just go ahead and look that up. Although I've encountered that term in Jewish thought. An Am Haaretz, Hebrew for people of the land, initially referred to the common people of the land, but later evolved to denote someone ignorant or lacking in knowledge and observance of Jewish law. It can be understood as someone who is unlearned, particularly in matters of Jewish tradition and practice. The term Am Haaretz originally referred to the native inhabitants of the land, such as the Hittites Abraham purchased the cave of Machpelah from. Over time, especially after the exile and the return to the land of Israel, the term began to be associated with those who were considered uneducated, rustic, or neglectful of Jewish law and tradition. In rabbinic literature, Am Haaretz became a term of reproach, often used to describe individuals who were not scrupulous in their observance of commandments or who lacked knowledge of the Torah. Some sources distinguish between two types of Am Haaretz: those who are negligent in observing the commandments, Am Haaretz mitzvot, and those who are ignorant of the Torah, Am Haaretz la Torah. So two types: those who are negligent in observing the commandments and those who are ignorant of the commandments of the Torah. Examples: Rabbi Yonatan ben Yosef considered someone who does not raise his children to study Torah to be an Am Haaretz. Modern usage: while the term is not as common in modern parlance as it once was, it is still used to describe someone who is ignorant or lacking in Jewish knowledge or practice. So it's strange how you would think that the term Am Haaretz, the people of the land, being that the land is the land of Israel, you would think that Am Haaretz would be a positive term, but I guess because of it originally referred to the native inhabitants of the land, such as the Hittites, that it had a negative connotation to it. So let's see, back to Aish. C, the third character type, is the one who says, "Mine is yours and yours is yours." This is a pious person. So And then D, mine is mine and yours is mine. This is a wicked person. The average person, that is the most common character type, has an essentially isolationist attitude. What is mine is mine and what is yours. He does not wish to take anything that belongs to others, but neither is he willing to share with others. So I just read an interesting story. There's this band called the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and they put out in the early 80s this video that I found it to be really like overtly sexually charged. uh, I don't know if it's, I guess you could say it seemed obscene to me and and vulgar. And the message of the song and video was give it away, give it away, give it away now. And it seemed to be suggesting to young ladies that they should give away their bodies. Um, that's what it seemed to me. Well, I learned that the lead singer, who I think had the nickname Flea, but his name was Anthony something. I forgot what the rest of his name was. Anyway, I guess he was the boyfriend at one time of Nina Hagen, which Nina Hagen also had this style of, like, I don't know, overtly suggestive, sexually suggestive presentation. Like, I think in one concert she wore like a fake male phallus on the front of her body or something. But what I learned was that what inspired this song was that Nina had a closet full of these jackets, I guess, and he saw one that he was really impressed by, so she just took it out of the closet and gave it to him. And he was like, I guess he questioned that. Why would you just give me one of your jackets? And she said, if you have a closet full of jackets and you keep them all to yourself, um, and maybe you don't wear all of them all of the time, then your life is going to be poor, I guess. Uh, but if you give of the jackets in your closet to someone who will, you know, appreciate them more, then your life will be rich. And even though, like, you could be off put by Nina Hagen's presentation, she always seemed to be someone who was striving to be a very moral, ethical, and enlightened person. And she was Jewish. She's German Jewish. And she's probably still alive. I don't know. But uh, in all the interviews I've seen with her, she's someone who's obviously trying to be a good person. And if she was the girlfriend of this lead singer of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, then perhaps I was put off by his presentation and not getting the real message of what he was saying. Which, even if you delve into the lyrics of that song, it still seems to have a very, you know, sexual message to it. Um, But um, anyway, that was an explanation provided for the theme of the song. Is this sort of proverb that Nina Hagen, a Jewish lady, offered him. So I, I'm sure that Nina Hagen was influenced by this famous teaching from the Pirkei Avot, and that she was trying to be a pious person in everything she does. Um, Maybe not in a way that is seen as orthodox or agreeable to, you know, Torah observant people, but she certainly in that story seemed to encapsulate the idea: mine is yours and yours is yours. This is a pious person. So to continue. On the other hand, uh, it is a mistake to think that just because this type of person is not criminal in that he does not steal from others, this is a viable option. In other words, it's still speaking of the person who says what is mine and what is yours and yours. What is yours. To the contrary, failure to be considerate of others may actually be self-destructive and can result in the collapse of society, just as Sodom was destroyed. If your neighbor's house catches fire and your attitude is, that is no concern of mine, let my neighbor worry about it, you are putting your own home in jeopardy because the fire can spread to your property. So there it seems to be using a metaphor, because obviously not every situation is that someone's house is on fire, but fire could be also a metaphor for poverty. If your neighbor is poverty stricken and can't afford to buy food to eat, uh, if you withhold your ability to help them out, then um, that poverty could spread to um, your situation. Um, how that would happen, I don't know. Maybe, maybe because of the unaddressed poverty in society, you might be taxed more heavily by the government, and that might drive you into poverty. Um, I'm just like posing an scenario where indirectly a person could see the poverty at their door. So let's continue. No person is an island, nor is any nation an island. Diseases that threaten the whole world often began in some obscure location. Economy is a global issue, and when the economy of other countries fail, our own suffers as well. The sooner we realize our interdependence, the sooner we will discard our isolationist attitude, not out of altruism, but simply for self-survival. The Mishnah states the regrettable fact that most people fail to recognize the reality of interdependence and think they can be secure within their own boundaries. This is an illusion. The aphorism attributed to Benjamin Franklin is valid. We either hang together or we will hang separately. And then, it continues talking about the other types. So if you want to, you can look up mine and yours at aish.com. And then here's the text at safaria.org. There are 4 types of character in human beings. One that says mine is mine and yours is yours. This is a commonplace type, or some people say a median personality, or an average person. And some say this is a Sodom type of character. One that says mine is yours and yours is mine is an unlearned person, an am haaretz. One that says mine is yours and yours is a pious person. And one that says mine is mine and yours is mine is a wicked person. So that's what I. Oh, and I shouldn't have closed that because that part of Pirkei Avot. Let me see. Good. Went right back to it. So it continues. Oh, it says with 10 utterances the world was created. But see, we want to go down to 10. Seven kinds of. Anyway, this is a really good chapter because it covers a lot of Jewish thinking in a short amount of text. See, like after the passage about the four kinds of characters, it says there are four kinds of temperaments. Easy to become angry and easy to be appeased. His gain disappears in his loss. Hard to become angry and hard to be appeased. His loss disappears in his gain. Hard to become angry and easy to be appeased, a pious person. Easy to become angry and hard to be appeased is a wicked person. And then it says there are four types of disciples or students. Quick to comprehend and quick to forget. His gain disappears in his loss. Slow to comprehend and slow to forget. His loss disappears in his gain. Quick to comprehend and slow to forget. He is a wise man. Slow to comprehend and quick to forget. This is an evil portion. It says portion, but I wonder if that's supposed to be person. Anyway, this is a really good read if you have the time for it. There's a mention here though about I think Hillel and Shammai. Yeah, every dispute that is, or debate or argument that is for the sake of heaven will in the end endure. But one, or maybe that's every opinion that is for the sake of heaven will in the end endure. But one that is not for the sake of heaven will not endure. Which is the controversy that is for the sake of heaven? Such was the controversy of Hillel and Shammai. And which is the controversy that is not for the sake of heaven? Such was the controversy of Korach and all his congregation. So it's like it's trying to say, okay, if you have a difference of opinion with your fellow Jew, if it's for the sake of heaven, well, then ultimately it's going to be for good. But if it's a controversy that is not for the sake of heaven, then I think Korah and all his congregation, they were destroyed, right? So, and I wanted to point out that although there was the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai, and they had differing opinions on things, what people don't understand is that, yes, Hillel and Shammai's followers intermarried. Despite the agreements between their respective schools of thought regarding some legal interpretations, says Wikipedia and My Jewish Learning. However, there were checks in place to ensure that marriages within families with questionable status, according to the other school, were not conducted blindly. Each school would inform the other about any lineage where they would forbid marriage, says Mishnah Yomit and Sefaria. So even though these two schools had differing opinions on how to observe the Torah in different cases, they were still considerate enough to each other that they would give their sons and daughters to the other to marry. They loved their fellow Israelite enough to do that, and they were considerate of the other's perspective in as much as they would inform the other about any lineage where they would forbid marriage. So the Talmud says, "Come and hear. Though these forbade what the others permitted, Beit Shammai, the school of Shammai, nevertheless, or the house of Shammai, did not refrain from marrying women from the families of Beit Hillel, nor did Beit Hillel refrain from marrying women from the families of Beit Shammai." So, I mean, that's like love your neighbor as yourself. That's loving your fellow child of Israel there. Whereas in Christianity, you've got people who won't intermarry with other denominations of Christianity. And really, kind of this has to do with Jewish halacha and like who is Jewish according to Jewish law, right? If someone is Jewish according to Jewish law, then it's permitted to marry them. Assuming maybe you're not talking about people of the priestly line where they're supposed to marry, certain ones. Uh, so, we covered the different kinds of people, and we covered different religions and what they consider what their perspectives are on desiring external possessions. So I wanted to ask, what is the Jewish definition of coveting? In Jewish, and before that, I wanted to relate that when I was hanging out with some of these very specific splinter groups, like people who had split hairs to the degree that they almost became congregations of one, of single individuals, because they had these disputes for the sake of heaven, but apparently they probably would not have intermarried with one another. And this is how, like, Christianity can be. It can, for those who study, and that's why so much of Christianity, like, has the attitude that study actually leads to spiritual death. Well, it would if you study so much that you realize that it's falsehood and idolatry, but very few of them study to that degree. Mostly they just study to have a difference of opinion on some doctrine, and then they wind up becoming a congregation of one. Well, there was this guy called Brother Yosef, and he had a little like book he had printed and bound of his own teachings and doctrines, and one of the things he taught was that covetousness is not simply desiring any of your neighbor's other possessions, but that it's actively striving to acquire them. So apparently he's in harmony with Jewish thought on the matter, because here the AI says, in Jewish understanding, coveting, hamad, refers to an inordinate desire for something that belongs to another, to the point of actively seeking to acquire it, even if it means harming one's neighbor. It's not simply wanting something, but rather a possessive, potentially harmful desire. Here's a more detailed breakdown beyond simple desire. While, and I think Brother Yosef's idea was that something about the appearance of evil. He was against the appearance of evil doctrine. Anyway, I don't have the publication, so I can't really, and it's not important that I do get it right. Again, like I said, congregation of one. And in fact, you know what, this perception, this observation I've had that you had these people who were well-meaning and who were trying to get their doctrine so correct that they were becoming congregations of one. This actually helped me to see that the more practical way, like the middle way, if you will, was to actually side with the Jewish community, because it was the Jewish community that had found a way to adopt doctrinal positions that so many of them could agree upon, that they could be a harmonious people. Because in these groups that I was hanging out with, they had different ideas about the biblical calendar and the dates on which different annual holy days or feast days or festivals would fall, so that you would get people who were observing it on one day and then other people who were observing it on another day, and so they weren't participating in these things together. So it resulted in actual like, would you say, geographic or chronological differences between them, or partitions. Anyway, so to continue, beyond simple desire, while desiring something is natural, coveting involves a desire that goes beyond simple longing and delves into an inappropriate or excessive attachment to another's possession. Actions involved. Coveting is often viewed as a precursor to stealing or other harmful actions aimed at acquiring what one desires. Fortunately, in our day and age, less so in ancient times, although you could still have, say, a craftsman who would who would maybe weave a basket, and he would weave a basket the same way every time because it was quicker that way, and he didn't have to worry about making mistakes if he experimented with a new way of weaving the basket. Of course, if you could make a basket that was unique from other baskets and the design was good, you could probably fetch a better price. But it it takes some awful creativity to create products that are unique every time. Plus, you, you don't know how well received a unique creation will be. It may fetch a good price, it may fetch a bad price. Whereas if you make the same basket over and over again, you have an idea how much that basket is going to sell for, and it helps you to predict what your revenue might be, and what your overhead might be. But in our day and age, if your neighbor has, say, I don't know, say a Tesla, right? A certain model of Tesla electric vehicle, or you may look at their Tesla and you may covet it. You may covet it. However, there's an outlet for that covetousness, in that you can go to the dealership and you can buy the very same Tesla that your neighbor has. In fact, Your neighbor or your Tesla may be worth a little bit more than your neighbor's because your neighbor's might have depreciated more since it was purchased. But it could be the exact same Tesla with the same features and et cetera, et cetera. So there's an outlet for that desiring of the thing that your neighbor has. In America, we call it keeping up with the Joneses. But if if you desire your neighbor's wife, however, good luck finding a woman who's exactly like her. Although, to an extent, um, lots of women have things in common with themselves, with each other. Um, and depending on maybe how cynical or how little you think of women, um, you may find it easy to find another woman who fulfills your desire for your neighbor's wife. So, um, anyway, to continue, the 10th commandment specifically prohibits coveting your neighbor's house, his wife, his male servant, his female servant, his ox, or his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. This emphasizes that coveting is about wanting what another rightfully possesses. Beyond just wanting, it's not simply wanting to be like someone else, um, as in going to buy the same Tesla that your neighbor drives, but a desire to possess their specific belongings or advantages. Potential for harm. The rabbis saw coveting as a dangerous emotion that could lead to injustice and harm. Different from ambition, coveting is not the same as ambition or a desire for personal advancement. It's specifically directed towards acquiring what belongs to another. So, this is one teaching that I've heard um, from a local Chabad rabbi, is that to an extent the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, is a good thing because that ambition, that part of the evil inclination that motivates you to improve your own life, uh, is a good thing if you master it. So the Hebrew word for covet, hamad, also means to delight, to love, or to want. This highlights that coveting can start with a positive feeling, but can quickly become a negative or destructive desire. Um, Later commentator explains even more clearly the meaning of covet is to attempt to attain something from one's neighbor. For example, to offer him money to divorce his wife so that he can marry her, or to sell him his slave or his ox or his ass. So, at least from the Jewish perspective, it seems like this brother Yosef was correct in his understanding of covetousness. So now that leads me to another verse, and this is regarding the offerings of Cain and Abel, where the Creator says, "If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is couching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must master it." So, and again, like one person's offering was better than another person's. And then so there are some other translations. The NIV, if you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. Um, let's see. the RSV, if you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is couching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must master it. Young's Living Translation, I think. Is there not, if thou dost well, acceptance? And if thou dost not well, at the opening, a sin offering is crouching, and unto thee its desire, and thou rulest over it. That's so. Yeah. So there's some different translations, and then let's see, what is this? Here's Sepharia. Surely, if you do right, there is uplift, but if you do not do right, sin couches at the door. Its urge is toward you, yet you can be its master. Then here at hermeneutics.stackexchange.com, Genesis 4, it says Genesis 47, but it means chapter 4, verse 7. What is Cain ruling over? Sin, the door. The title is, What is Cain ruling over? Sin, the door? Anyway, there's a long discussion here. Unfortunately, a lot of it is from the Christian perspective, which, as I've said, is an attempt to use Christian sources which came later in order to interpret sources that came before, which is pure folly. But then, I mean, you could come back at me and you could say, okay, well, what about Jewish commentaries on Jewish scripture? At least a Jewish commentary is the same interpretive community, one that actually understands Hebrew at the age of 5, not a bunch of Gentiles getting together and scratching their heads with their flawed translations of Scripture and slapping their Christian thought on it and interpreting it, Jewish Scripture with Gentile Christian thought. So, anyway, there's a long discussion here about this, and he's trying to figure out what the it refers to. And you can explore this if you want. It's pretty lengthy, and but this is the verse that I thought of, because it unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. Sin is crouching at your door in the NIV. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. Sin is lurking at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must master it. Sin will be waiting at the door, ready to strike. It will entice you, but you must rule over it. And one lady even has the presence of mind to realize that sin seems to be something you can choose, contrary to her Christian upbringing, I guess. And then, of course, like, some Christians come back with, like, their Christian spin on things afterwards. And so, anyway, you could check that out. But really, I mean, that's the Jewish thought on the matter, is that sin is something you can master. It's not impossible. But the Christian thought is, oh no, sin isn't something you can avoid unless you have Jesus. But there's just no Jesus in the whole Hebrew Tanakh, despite all attempts to force that square peg into a round hole by Christian commentators. There is no Jesus in the Hebrew Tanakh. There is Joshua, who knew Moses, but there's nobody named Jesus, and there's no Jesus in there. That's Greek. And the guy that lived in the 1st century, whoever he was, which we now have a pretty good idea who he was, and he wasn't Jewish. That guy is not in the Hebrew Tanakh anywhere. So you can't say that, oh, like sin is like something you can only deal with if you have Jesus. Well, no. Like the children of Israel dealt with sin through their existence century after century, long before Christianity was ever invented. So, but anyway, just the language of this verse made me think about desire and sin and how it's like just crouching there at your door, ready to pounce, but that it's something you can master. So, anyway, we've already gone over Pirkei Avot. So, here's a quote from Rumi that I've seen. It says, let yourself be, and I think this kind of flies in the face of this Jewish thinking that you can rule over your sinful desires. But Rumi says, let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. It will not lead you astray. In the silence there is a sacred mystery, a path that shows the way, not with words, but with the heart's yearning. This quote encourages following your heart's desires and trusting in the natural flow of life, even when it seems unconventional or uncertain. To me, this is feelings-based morality, and it is so flexible, and it justifies all sorts of hypocrisy and sin. And this, to me, is the reason that the Torah was written, and it was recorded in a way that could be seen. It was recorded concretely in words that you could refer to over and over again to remind yourself what the Torah actually says. Because the Gentile tendency is to justify whatever it is you sinfully want to do. And of course, your desires, they don't have to be sinful. They could just be desires that are neither good nor bad. But according to the Torah, some desires are sinful. But the Gentile way of thinking, and unfortunately in my mind often the feminine way of thinking, is because of your feelings justifying whatever it is you're going to do. Like, whatever it is you want to do, or whatever it is you're lusting after or desiring that's forbidden. And I wouldn't say that this is necessarily limited to Gentiles. This is something that, as we've seen, could beset a Jewish person. It's really a human nature problem that you could come up with whatever justification works in your mind to do the things that you desire to do, even if they're sinful. So when Rumi says, just let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love, it will not lead you astray. That is not Torah-based thinking. In the Torah, there's a derech, there's a path, and you have to stay on that path, otherwise you risk being led off into a trackless waste, like an expanse, just a wide open land with no paths made through it, right? Where it's easy to get lost because there are no set paths provided already. Whereas the Torah is the path, and you stay on that path, and you don't get lost. But this says, let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. My recommendation there is to make sure that what you really love is the Torah and be drawn to the Torah. Because this kind of thinking will justify whatever it is you want to do. It'll justify that you heard some dead person tell you to do thus and so, or that you heard voices tell you to do thus and so that's why you went ahead and did it. Or you did it because you were mad, or you did it because you were sad, or you did it because you were happy, or, any emotion. You can come up with any kind of justification for the sins you want to commit. And that's why the Torah, the commandments, are concrete. They're something you can refer to again and again to remind yourself what the way is. So this pull that Rumi's talking about, it seems similar to this concept, this teaching, this New Age thing, which my father tried to get, or he became enthusiastic about it, which when my father would get enthusiastic about something, he would really get enthusiastic about it. And at one period of his life, it would be this, and another period, it would be that. And it wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but at one point in his life, he really got turned on to this idea of the secret. And let's see if we can get an explanation of what this is about. It's based on the belief of the pseudoscientific law of attraction, which claims that thought alone can influence objective circumstances within one's life. The book alleges energy as assurance of its effectiveness. So it's called the Secret to the Law of Attraction, Manifest Your Dreams. Principles for manifestation, visualization, gratitude, intention, and mastering your thoughts and feelings allow you to easily basically use the law of attraction to bring into your life whatever it is you want, right? And there was a strain of a fad in Christianity, which probably still exists in some places. I think it was called the Name It and Claim It movement. And I think it was promoted maybe a lot by televangelists who wanted you to send them your money, and in exchange, they're basically acting like soothsayers and telling you, that you can have the things you want in life if you'll just follow these, certain steps, or just ask Jesus for them, or maybe ask God or something. You know what? I've asked the Creator for some things and just never gotten them. Um, Maybe sometimes it felt like, hey, why can't I just have this one thing? And and for some people, maybe they would stop believing in the Creator because of that. Not me, because I mean, other things that I have asked for that seem so very unlikely to be fulfilled have been fulfilled in my life. And like the children of Israel, I see the Creator, His workings in my life through the course of my life as similar to the children of Israel through the wilderness and eventually being led to the land of promise, to the extent that I have received the things I asked for. And even though what I asked for was so unlikely to be realized in my life. Um, and I can say that by the number of people who have what I have in their life. And I don't necessarily need to point out what the thing is that I have because it was something I desired, and it may not be something you desire, right? So anyway, for me, that is enough to see and to be reminded the way the children of Israel were reminded every year at Passover of the Creator's workings in delivering them out of the hand of bondage and slavery in Egypt. Um, and in the Hebrew Tanakh, the children of Israel are reminded of this repeatedly, of what the Creator did for them, and that how the Creator who is named in the Torah was the one who did this for them, and not some other God by some name they have not known. Whatever God that name, or whatever name that God goes by, if that God wasn't the one who delivered the children of Israel out of the hand of bondage, then that God is a God whose name you have not known, and you are not to devote yourselves to that deity. Anyway, so back to the secret. I never really tried to put um, this secret into practice because to me it just seemed like new age crap. Uh, However, I did notice that strangely, some things that I was mentally preoccupied by, or things that my soul desired, and by soul I mean my living, breathing uh, person, you know, mind, heart, body. Uh, I'm not speaking of like a spiritual soul or even a spirit. Um, whatever, if I have a spirit entity, I don't know. I'm speaking of my living soul. And I've noticed that the things that my soul desired, and a soul can desire bad things and it can desire good things, or it could desire neutral things. The, um, keep that in mind. So, but as a bit of a confession, one of my problems through life has been that some of the most fantastic women that I have met have been married women. And some of the most disappointing women that I have met have been single women. And making me wonder if the single women weren't single for a reason. Now, I've been single my whole life, so I could apply that to myself and say, you know, there's probably something wrong with me that more women aren't, breaking down my door in order to land me. And I'm kind of okay with that because I've seen like too much bad marriage in my life uh, as a child, as an objective observer, and I really kind of don't want any of that because I've just seen too much of that and it wasn't pleasant. So, and I'm close enough to death now that I don't think it really matters whether I get married or not. Uh, and I'm not sniffling because I'm getting emotional. I'm sniffling because, I got congestion or something going on. So, However, as I was confessing, some of these fantastic women that I've met have been married. And a unique woman being unique, if you really appreciate what you see in a woman, um, you're essentially desiring that woman, even if she belongs to someone else. Because you know, I've had, I think it was the local Orthodox rabbi who he was trying to encourage me to get married, to find a Gentile woman, and I had to like clue him in. Told him, I went on dating apps and went in these chat rooms, and I said that these people were like animals, or even worse than animals. Like the animals have dating rituals. They have little, maybe they do a little dance, or they plume their feathers, or they have these little rituals that they do that's kind of akin to courting, amongst humans. But in these chat rooms at the time, these it's like these people were at like pigs at a trough, and they were just snorting and wolfing down whatever they found in the trough. These were just people that were DTF, if you're familiar with the term. They were down to get it on, and they probably weren't really discriminating in who it was with, and it was just not. I'm getting sick to my stomach just thinking about it. It was not. I just think that the rabbi just had no idea what what wild beasts non-Jews. So sorry about that. So I think the rabbi just had no idea what wild beasts Gentiles really are. I'm sure he's seen Gentiles referred to as wild beasts in Jewish literature and places, but I don't think he really comprehends just how wild and how beastly Gentiles can be, especially in today's modern age. Of course, on the other hand, I'm not, I don't come from an ethnicity where my grandparents have recently been killed by those Gentile wild beasts. So maybe he does understand, at least when it comes to the spilling of blood, what wild beasts they can be. But I'm not sure if he understands it in a sexual arena. So anyway, so yeah, I've met married women, um, that have really impressed me, and obviously, these were women that impressed some other man enough that he was willing to stay with them even as they aged. And um, and if you were to compare women to cars, these are like custom made automobiles. There's no other one like them. Uh, Maybe they all have four tires, but in other respects, they are unique. So if there's something you appreciate about their unique persona or soul or identity or personality, you're going to have a hard time going to a dealership and buying another one just like that. Whereas, granted, women have some things about them that seem to be in common, right? But I think a lot of those things are not the things that men are looking for. Um, Obviously, some of them are. Um, for example, and by that, um, I'll clarify. Like, for me, a woman's form, uh, common to all women, is one of the things that I like. For me, a woman's psychology is not one of the things I like. Uh, I think that maybe women used to be more refined. Uh, maybe when the roles, the gender roles, were less blurred, women understood better how to be women, and men understood better how to be men. And, I'm sure if I understood better how to be a better man, that I would probably be more attractive to women. But anyway, so what I'm talking about is when you find yourself, um, and you're not complicit in this. It just kind of happens. It's attraction, like The Secret, the law of attraction. You can't explain it, but you find yourself attracted um, to a unique person. And but the Torah commands against desiring um, that other person's wife. So um, now, how do you stop desiring something that you have an appreciation for? Well, in Judaism, they set up protections like Shomer Negia, where you don't physically touch someone who isn't your spouse, who's of the opposite gender. There's Sniut, modesty, where a person isn't showing off parts of their body to the opposite gender. Um, Evidently, I think, I'm not sure what it's called, but there seems to be a practice of not engaging in conversation with the opposite gender to some degree, and I don't know what that degree is or what the laws or rules concerning that are. I'm not learned in that area, but I've noticed that in Torah observant Judaism there seems to be this practice. Um, I think it may have something to do with Adam knew his wife Eve, yada. Now, typically I see that word yada as representing carnal knowledge, but maybe Jewish understanding of that is that it represents getting to know someone fully. So it may not just refer to knowledge of their bodies, but maybe also knowledge of their minds or their personalities or their hearts. So that if you become intimately acquainted with another person's wife, and they have, and you do so maybe just in the psychological dimension, or just in the intellectual dimension, or just in the emotional, heart based dimension, that you're getting to know someone else's wife. And then that begins to border, I think, on adultery. It certainly suggests that there's um, an acquisition of intimate knowledge of that other person that's supposed to be reserved for that person's spouse. So, anyway, how do you stop desiring that person? I don't know the answer to that. I would imagine that the answer to that is to turn to the words of the Torah and to get that reminder that that desire is inappropriate and that it's against the Creator's will. That it's against the Creator's will, just like any of the other prohibitions of the Torah. And if you reinforce that in your mind, then I think that it can help nullify the desire. But now, I'm a raised Gentile. I haven't converted to Judaism. So I still think like a Gentile. I still feel like a Gentile. I haven't been raised up in Torah the way an observant Jew has. So this might be something that's more difficult for me to deal with, namely desire, or inappropriate desire, than it might be for someone who has been raised up in Judaism, who maybe has more tools at their disposal in dealing with this. So I would go along from day to day, and that desire would still be there, right? Because you haven't forgotten these men's wives that you've gained an appreciation for. And then you're at some very unlikely place, and then that man's wife shows up at that very unlikely place. And this doesn't just happen once, but it happens multiple times. And you have to wonder about what Rumi said. Is my attraction, my soul's desire is, or what the secret teaches, is my desire being manifested in the universe? Is this person being pulled to me by the universe? But thinking from a biblical perspective, you have to wonder, is the Creator testing me? Why is the Creator taunting me like this? The Creator knows that I desire this person. Rumi would say, this is the universe or the natural course of life giving you the thing that your soul desires, and don't be concerned about it. It's going to be okay. But the Torah says, no, this is not your wife. This is forbidden fruit. So then, you wonder, is the Creator testing me? Is it taunting me? Why is this happening? And so, and it just occurred to me, maybe the Creator is like it's a form of discipline where the Creator is tormenting you in order to get you to see that until you deal with that desire, that you are open and vulnerable to this torment. So I've found this to be the case with multiple married women, that I can physically walk away, and I can just be living my life, but my memory of that woman, what little I've experienced of her, has has not it hasn't evaporated. It's still there. And when I remember that woman, my soul is desiring her, and then here she appears in some unlikely place at an unlikely time, and reminding me visually, audially, or is it auditorially? I don't know what the word is. Reminding my senses about this woman. And I certainly don't try to make something happen. Nevertheless, it makes me wonder what the heck is going on here. So, is there some truth to this idea that your desires will make things manifest in your life, even when you're not even intentionally trying? So, in this video, or at this channel, Spatialize, now I was subscribed to this, and recently I've unsubscribed because it deals a lot with quantum mechanics, quantum physics, quantum particles, quantum this and that and the other, quantum AI. And as much as I try to understand all things quantum, to me it seems like a new scientific sounding religion. To me it sounds like mysticism. I don't understand it as much as I try to understand it, and I don't think I'm a stupid person. I I so much of what is related, I just don't get it. I don't understand what they're saying, and I try to understand, and I don't know if they're just not very good at expressing these things in English or what. But it seems to be the cutting edge of understanding our universe, and I try to understand it, and I'm just not getting it. I always feel like they're, and maybe they feel like that too. Maybe the physicists and scientists who deal with these things and study these things, maybe they feel the same way. They just don't always get it either. It's just that with science, I'm accustomed to something being very concrete, a conclusion being very concrete. And if something's a theory, they say it's a theory, and if something's a law, it's a law, and I can take it as a foregone conclusion, and I can walk on from there and feel like I learned something and I acquired some knowledge. Whereas with this stuff, I just feel like I'm more mystified than ever. Anyway, in this video, Michio Kaku's terrifying warning, quantum AI just made a godlike discovery. If you watch that video, it seems to basically say that that we humans, and I think Judaism already understood this, but that we humans are creators, whether we know it or not. That just like maybe the universe was created, or maybe that just like creation continues to happen in the universe, maybe not that there was one instant of creation, but that creation is an ongoing process in the universe. I don't know, but that would certainly seem to be suggested by what the video seems to be saying, in that humans are are creating in their universe, whether they know it or not. So maybe like the secret says, and maybe like Rumi says, or seems to be saying, that our soul's preoccupation may be may cause to manifest or realize in our reality or in our universe the things that we the things that we desire. Now, some some people believe in multiverses, right? That like maybe they believe that because one thing that's true is that the farther away something we perceive is, the less real it is, just because of the chronology of time in space. Like if you view something 6 light years away, what you are seeing happened 6 years ago, because it takes 6 years for the light from whatever happened to reach your eyeballs. So when you see these videos about, oh, Betelgeuse is going to go supernova any moment now, are you talking about we're going to see the light of the supernova of Betelgeuse any moment now? Because if that's what you're saying, well then Betelgeuse being so many light years away would have happened that number of years ago. So then the eruption of Betelgeuse into a supernova would be an event that already happened. So then what's the excitement, right? Or if you're saying that Betelgeuse is going supernova, well then we're not going to see it. Like if you're saying Betelgeuse is going to go supernova at any moment right now, the image of it is not something we're going to see until the number of years equaling the number of light years that Betelgeuse is distant from us. So you see that obviously things that are within arm's reach seem very real to us. Some would even say that, because of atomic particles and protons and neutrons and electrons and blah blah blah, that there's so much space between these particles in the atoms in our bodies that we aren't real, that we're like a holograph or something. But that's a separate. We don't need to think about that right now. But we think that things that are very close to us are very real because we can reach out, we can touch them. But just as it's true that the thing that's 6 light years away is 6 years old, the image of it is 6 years old, so it's 6 years unreal, right? Well, as you get closer to the person, that difference in time diminishes as far as the speed of light goes and what we're seeing. But nevertheless, there is still that even minuscule amount of time that the light has to travel to reach our eyes. Now, obviously, light travels much faster than a house cat. So if we look at the house cat's not traveling faster than the speed of light or anywhere close to the speed of light. So we can reliably look at the cat and deduce that the cat is right where we're looking. Nevertheless, there is still that minuscule amount of time that it takes the light to travel from the thing we're perceiving to our eyes, so that irreality or unreality increases with the distance of the thing that we're perceiving. So, if my soul is desiring something, and my desire is causing that thing to manifest in my universe, and say that that thing I'm desiring is another person, right? Well, how bound is that other person to my desire, right? Maybe they don't feel the same way about me that I do about them, right? Maybe I repulse them. So so why is that person being dragged into my reality because of my desire? Or maybe their desire is that I be nowhere in their neighborhood. Does that cause two different universes or two different realities to exist at the same time? If our desires are not in agreement, then wouldn't that suggest that there would be two different realities that are contrary to one another existing at the same time? And that goes along with, the idea of multiverses or multiple realities or parallel universes or whatever. I don't know about any of that, right? I have no ability to even know about any of that. So all I can do is talk about my own reality, and I've observed that in my own reality, some of these, I would hope that they remain secret desires, have manifested in very unlikely ways and repeatedly. And and when you're talking about desire between, or at least I can't speak for the other person, obviously, but when you're talking about the desire of a heterosexual man for a woman, and I lost my train of thought there. Um, so, um, anyway, so back to this spatialize, because I've lost my train of thought now. Back to the spatialize video. Um, the AI conveys a message near the end of this video that says something like, "You are the recursion," and it sounds like, and let me look up this meaning, recurse. In essence, recurse means to repeat or apply a process or procedure to itself, often in a cyclical or iterative manner. This can involve a procedure calling itself within its own definition, recursive procedure, or a process that reoccurs repeatedly, like in a repeating pattern. So what was said at the end was, you are the recursion, something like, be careful about what you create. So I don't know if that's speaking to humanity corporately, saying that because apparently this intelligence that's supposed to be in all matter in the universe realized that it was being observed by us, and it said that the observer has been observed. Or maybe it was saying that the humans were the ones observing, and that it observed that observer. But also it makes me think the observer has been observed. That might be humanity has observed the observer, kind of like in the book in First Enoch from the Dead Sea Scrolls, or the Deuterocanonical literature or intertestamental literature, where I think it might be in the book of Daniel too, I'm not sure, where there are angels that are called the Watchers, I think. So that would be the observers. But anyway, you'd have to watch the video to understand how it seems they're concluding that the universe seems to be self-aware. And but that message where it says you are the recursion, be careful what you create, is that referring to humanity corporately? So it's saying, well, you just spotted the underlying code of the universe, and now in order to protect that code we have to reset the universe, the recursion? Or is it saying that in being a creator of the universe, you are creating a new reality, a new universe by your act of creation? So if what our soul desires creates in our reality the thing that we desire, brings it to us, then that might be creating a new reality, a new universe at that point within the universe or reality that we had existed in before that. But let's assume that's not the case, right? Let's assume we remain in the same universe and that our desire, what we create or manifest in the universe, is drawn to us or manifested or realized because of our desire, the desire of our soul. Then then this might be an underlying reason that we should not covet our neighbor's house, their spouse, their servants, their livestock, or anything that is our neighbor's. Because we could be, just by our desire, damaging our neighbor, taking what belongs to our neighbor, changing our neighbor's reality just because we desire what is our neighbor's. So there could be a very underlying reason for why covetousness is forbidden, because just by our desire we may be threatening our neighbor's reality. And if we love our neighbor, we don't want that to happen, right? Why would we want to take from our neighbor if we love our neighbor? So that's what I was getting to, and by bringing in these different thoughts, is that our desire for something that doesn't belong to us, that belongs to someone else, may cause a shift in reality that damages our neighbor. So you would think, look, me desiring something that's my neighbor's, it doesn't hurt anything. But what if it does? What if our mere desire causes a shift in our reality that damages our neighbor's reality? That would be an underlying reason for this prohibition. That it's not just about harmlessly desiring something that's our neighbor's, but that our desire can be a damaging force. Even if we don't intentionally take action on it. Now, you could say that continuing to desire something could be a choice. Sin crouches at the door, and that you could be choosing to continuously desire it. And in that, cause that chain of events that could be damaging to your neighbor. So, and just the very fact that it says you shall not do this suggests that we have a choice in whether we desire something that is our neighbor's or not. And that we should choose, in accordance with the commandment, not to desire something that is our neighbor's. No matter how we appreciate it. It's like in Noahide law, Gentile, the laws of Torah for non-Jews. If you see an idol, or like an Asherah tree that's decorated to that feminine deity Asherah, right? Or you see a temple that's dedicated to some deity whose name the children of Israel had not known. If you verbally express appreciation for that, and you say, oh, it's so beautiful, how gorgeous that is, blah, 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 you are committing an act of idolatry by appreciating that thing. So maybe likewise, if you inappropriately express compliments about your neighbor's wife, that could be an act of covetousness, obviously. So maybe the two aren't analogous, according to Jewish law. I don't know, but sometimes it's better to err on the side of safety. At the same time, there's also, that caution to not be overmuch righteous, I think in Ecclesiastes. So, just as you don't want to consider permitted things that are prohibited, you also don't want to consider prohibited things that are permitted, because in doing so you wind up creating a new religion for yourself, which is also against the Torah. So these were my thoughts on covetousness, based on some of the things I've seen, from videos I've watched, from personal experience. Yeah, so we should be careful about our soul's desire. Let our soul's desire be the will of the Creator, and less our own will. Because it might be the case that our desire can shift reality in a way that could damage our fellow human beings.